Hello everyone, welcome back to ASEAN Clean Energy Week 2020 virtual conference, and very glad to see all of you again. This is Zoe, and I'm the project producer of Leader Associates. Also, I will be the host for this afternoon's speaking sessions. And before we get started, I would like to remind a few points in short. First of all, about who we are. We Leader Associates is a global leading event organizer, concentrates on renewable energy. In the past years, we have hosted events across Asia, Pacific, South America, Africa, and Europe. Secondly, please kindly find the afternoon session's brief agenda on these slides. In the first part, there are 3 authority talks separately focusing on Myanmar, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Then, the mini talk regarding difficulty in ASEAN microgrid will take place, following an Indonesia case studies by ACO Power. Thirdly, I would like to remind you that one-on-one business meeting has already opened on our event platform and available to all speakers and delegates with advanced tickets. Please take your time and explore more partnership. At last, all audience are welcome to raise any questions to the speakers through the Q&A box on the Zoom meeting. We will select 1 or 2 questions for speakers to answer after their presentation if there are still time left. So let's move to our afternoon sessions. So the afternoon sessions focus on the microgrid in Southeast Asia. Currently, there are millions of people live in the remote regions with no access to electricity, and microgrid is getting more attention because it can provide clean and reliable, also affordable power to those residents in the rural areas. And that is why we have invited 3 authority speakers from different countries to introduce more about microgrids. Our first speaker is Mr. Marvin, who is the Deputy Director General from Department of Rural Development, Myanmar, with 6 years experience in electric field. Mr. Marvin has been in his current position since 2018, and he is responsible for both rural electrification and procurement divisions. Moreover, he is now leading National Electrification Project as the project director. So, hi, Mr. Marvin. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear. Yeah.
Hi. So thank you for your coming, and now I will leave the microphone to you. You can start your speeches.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, dear distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. So it is an honor, and I'm very delighted to be one of the keynote speakers at this grand event, the virtual conference of the ASEAN Clean Energy Week. First of all, I'd like to extend my best wishes to you all to be physical and mental well-being. Today, I'm glad to have this opportunity to give a speech on phasing out diesel and deploying green energy in the Myanmar Islands. Allow me to use the PowerPoint presentation so that you could visualize better the situation of our country in power sector. So first of all, I'd like to start taking a good look back at over past 5 years in the power sector, resulting in 70% of population in darknet at night, and the rural community from the remote areas, especially islands, have very least opportunity to get electricity from the national grid. At this time, most of the people in this area got access to electricity from either standalone diesel generator or solar home system. On the other hand, in hilly area, for example, in Shan State and Chen State, we could see a lot of big hydro turbines The villagers implemented it by themselves and mostly are around 0.5 kilowatt. However, nowadays, the coverage of the electricity access rate is increased up to 50% or nationwide. In this regard, I wanted to point out how we paced along the way headed to be here. As you have known that the electricity is powerful by Gaspari around certain development. Similarly, reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy services are vital for social and economic development of each and everyone. That's why our government prioritized to promote electricity access and initiate the National Electrification Plan (NEP) in 2014 with a very ambitious goal to achieve universal electricity access by 2030. As per National Electrification Plan, we have launched the National Electrification Project (NEP) with the two components, Grid Extension Plan and Upgrade Electrification Program across the nation since 2015. Through the national project aided by the World Bank, our Department of Rural Development is started at the Upgrade Electrification Program across the nation to serve 2.47 million rural population by 2021. Apart from this, our department is working with the other international development partners to support the energy developers and to enhance the private sector participation in upgrade electrification program. In this case, I'd like to repeat how we set up upgrade area. According to the Geospatial Least Scope Plan or NEP, the remote and isolated rural area located beyond 10 miles of the existing national grid and no grid extension plan within next 10 years. It is called upgrade area, which will be implemented upgrade electrification program with the solar home system and mini grid system. Today, I'm going to highlight that mini grid project implementation. Within these past 5 years, we have implemented 102 mini grid projects using renewable energy. 68 projects, all of them are operating well, and the remaining projects are under construction stage. You can visualize the location of mini grid project sites by clicking the link or scanning the QR code. Most of the projects are utilizing solar power. Especially, we prioritize implementing solar mini grid projects when the remote islands where the national grid can difficult to reach. Up to now, there were 5 projects on the islands of the Tenenda region in the sea and 3 projects on the islands in the river. Among them, Kandi mini grid project is very remarkable because of being awarded the on-grid local grid ASEAN Renewable Energy Project Award 2019 in the 37th ASEAN Energy Business Forum. It is located on the remote island of the Nindari region and it has been running for 3 years. Here you can see how many households connected and how the user can consume the electricity through this mini grid. The total installed capacity is 113 kilowatt. The solar mini grid is now serving more than 300 households and 50 over protected energy users. In comparison with the existing 50 kilowatt diesel mini grid and the solar mini grid, the most significant part is that the fuel consumption goes down obviously in solar mini grid. Annual total fuel consumption decreased around 50% than before. Moreover, what we can see that the electricity tariff rate is cheaper than diesel generator, and also there are a lot of differences between the survey provision, subsidy scheme, energy efficiency and security, as well as implemented social impact. As you are aware, the inevitable implemented impact of diesel generator is greenhouse gas emission. Additionally, in case the oil spill out to the sea, it may be serious impact on marine life and also indirectly affected to people who rely on the aquaculture. Considering mitigating these negative impacts, renewable energy deployment but became the best solution. As for DRD, our department, the renewable energy-based mini grid projects are being implemented with 20% community contribution. 20% private investment, and 60% support from government. Although diesel generators provided as backup system or hybrid option, renewable fraction of most projects is over 90%. With regards to the community contribution, the community is allowed to contribute either cash or cash in kind so that it could bring all households to participate in this refrigeration program. In this case, I'm pleased to point out our findings on solar mini-grid project deployment in Myanmar Islands. We found it has high interest among village community due to extended service level, reliability, cost efficiency, and sustainability. Why does it have high interest among them? I would like to brief just a little bit about the current situation of islands. For example, in the entire region, it has about 800 small islands and more than 80,000 households still need to access electricity. Most of places, the local people pay high electricity bills because the national grid hasn't yet arrived there. At least the resident pay more than 600 Namajet is equivalent to 0.5 US dollar per unit. Consequently, business in the area has slowed down due to the low electricity. That's why the local business such as small-scale food manufacturing and local residents are very keen on finding the investor to provide electricity asset in the region. As per our experience, the local people are really eager to welcome the mini-grid project using renewable energy. Particularly, we noted that the local residents prefer solar power rather than the hydropower. On the other hand, the beneficiary and private sector are more confident because of 60% subsidy, technical assistance, as well as timely monitoring. Despite capital cost, operational cost of mini-grid project in Ireland are relatively high, making them unaffordable to some villagers. I believe it is only one feasible solution for island community because of high subsidy and a lofty renewable energy, renewable fraction. Most importantly, no island will be left in darkness. That is why we are scaling up mini-grid project implementation in the islands and then reaching to our goal, universal electricity access by 2030. So I'd like to conclude here my keynote speech presentation by giving my sincere thanks to you all for paying attention. Thank you so much for your attention.
Hi, Mr. Marvin.
Yes.
Yes, hi, thank you so much for your great speeches. And I suppose because you needed to have another meeting to catch, so you want to join us the Q&A sessions?
Yes, please accept my sincere apology. I have to join now as Deputy Minister for the next paper and leaving. So
okay.
If you have any question, please I will answer after I receive the question.
Yeah. Okay, sure, no problem. We will send you the questions if you receive any from our Q&A box or after the conference. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and so, okay, right. So for after the Myanmar chapter, we would like to move to our next speaking sessions. Is the Indonesia market and presented by Dr. Ardinal Arifin. And he is currently the Vice President of Technology Development and Standardized of PLN. So in Indonesia, his main responsibilities is to do the technology assessment and standardized in-house innovations. So until right now, Dr. Arifin is the team leader of PLN Smart Grid implementation since 2016, and the team leader of electric vehicle infrastructure development of PLN since 2013. And hi, Dr. Arvin, can you hear us now?
Hello, good afternoon, Joe.
Hi, good afternoon. Okay, so thank you for your participants, and I will leave the screen to you now, and you can start to share your screen also and start your presentations.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for inviting me to this wonderful event. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zainal Arifin. I represent the PLN Indonesia, the state-owned electricity company. So I would like to share about how we develop and what kind of policy we have for developing smart microgrid in Indonesia. Okay. First of all, I would like to start with a brief introduction who we are. Actually, PLN is one of the largest Indonesian state-owned company within more than 100 billion US dollar in asset and revenue about 19 billion US dollar a year. It's maybe also PLN is the largest utility company in the Southeast Asia. We are the only one company who have end-to-end business processes for the power utility in Indonesia. It means we operate power generation, transmission, distribution, and also retail. Right now, for power generation, we totally more than 62 gigawatt. PLN operate and own about 70%, and the remaining is owned and operated by private, by IPP, about 30%. The proportion of IPP will be larger and larger, and I think in the next 5 years will be equal with PLN 50-50 to the about the power generation market in Indonesia. For the transmission, actually, we still operate all transmission facility in Indonesia. We have more than 53,000 kilometers circuit transmission line with the capacity of power transformer more than 130,000 megawatt ampere. And also for the distribution, right now we still operate on all distribution line, almost, yeah, because in some region there is some small company already had their license to operate also for power to distribution line. Maybe for the distribution line, we still operate on 19%. We operate and own 553,000 more kilometers circuit distribution line, and our customer right now is more than 71 million customers around Indonesia. And the most interesting thing about PLN, we have more than 30 million customers using prepaid meters. It makes Indonesia is the largest country who utilizing the prepaid prepaid meters technology in the world. So I will start with the definition. Yeah, what actually the smart microgrid? Yeah, I refer to the general definition coming from IEC. The smart a smart or microgrid. Smart microgrid is a group of interconnected load and distributed energy resources with defined electrical boundaries forming a local electric power system at distribution voltage level that act as a single controllable entity and is able to operate in either grid connected or island mode. So basically, the microgrid has the basic design like this figure, yeah. So the number one, of course, they have energy resources. Microgrid mostly the energy power coming from distributed energy resources can be both renewable energy and can be also still fossil fuel. And of course, grid talking about the supply and also demand. And we at the microgrid also has the storage system, mostly battery energy storage system, and also distribution line. And the central, the smart thing is energy management system, which regulate all four components to be microgrid. And actually, basically, microgrid has three basic operation mode. The number one is off grid. So the grid is disconnected with the grid, the existing grid, the largest grid. And then number two, connected with the grid with two options. Islandable, it means sometimes can be off, can be on, and uh, another thing is non-islandable mode operation. So why we need microgrids? Actually, microgrid, you know, uh, is needed not only for the small scale demand, but also for little bit large, but in a different region. What we have is basically microgrid is needed to increase electrification. The government want to increase the energy access for all people around the nation. And also, microgrid is needed for increasing, for improving the resiliency, the reliability, and also the green, the penetration of renewable energy at the existing grid. So talking about the microgrid is not only at the small scattered isolated island, but also can be located at the city, at the urban area. It depends on what purposes of we build the microgrid. We have at least 5 reasons why we build microgrid. The first one, I already mentioned that microgrid is built at some isolated areas to increase energy access, to increase the electrification rate of the nation. Number two is because the microgrid sometimes the location and scatter is so far from the community, from the city, it's not easy to supply the fuel. So we also want to reduce the fossil consumption for the microgrid, utilize such renewable energy like PV solar and maybe also small wind turbine. So the second thing why we need microgrid, because we would like to reduce the fuel cost of the power station. And number three, of course, because we utilize more the renewable energy, it means we also increase the renewable energy penetration at our grid. And also we need microgrid in case we want to improve the reliability and also the resiliency for the existing our existing grid. For the resiliency, for example, we can look here for the military base, for the reliability, industrial estates, a hospital, commercial complex, who need some high level quality power services. For the energy access, for the fuel cost reduction and renewable energy penetration, actually mostly located at some small scattered isolated area or island. In case of PLN, because we are archipelago country which have more than 13,000 islands, so we have several grid in our nation. PLN has at least 3 grid. The first one is a high voltage grid, consists of 3 types. 150 kilo V, 275 and 500 kilo V. We have 7 grid here. This connect the red line is talk about one system. This two system, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and also here very small. Already high voltage. And also, instead of the high voltage, we also still about 200 medium voltage, 20 kV. And also, the remaining is still off-grid, consists about 900 off-grid using low voltage, about 400 V. What we have done, actually, PLN only so far only have 3 microgrids in operation. The first, the oldest one is Bilicenge and East Nusa Tenggara here, and also close here is West Nusa Tenggara, Semau. This just operated this month, and also this the new one, Sebira, close to the capital city, close to Jakarta. This in island also, and also, right now we're still ongoing smart microgrid project in 3 locations, still on procurement step. Tahuna here in North Sulawesi, Selayar in South Sulawesi, and Medan here in West Nusa Tenggara. We hope that all three microgrid will be commercial next year. So, of course, yeah, we will have more and more smart microgrid in Indonesia. Because why? Because actually, until right now, we still operate so many diesel power stations around the country. The problem, what the problem with the diesel power station? The problem is the cost. The electricity cost production coming from the diesel power station is expensive. The LCOE, levelized cost of electricity, is between 15 until 20 cent dollar per kilowatt hour. Why we want to replace this power station to be such renewable energy? We have planning in the next years. From the total capacity of the diesel, 225 megawatt, we want to replace to the renewable energy, of course, with the smart microgrid technology. Hopefully, we can reduce the oil consumption up to 354,000 tons a year, and it's equal to CO2 emission reduction almost 1 million ton a year. So before we define the location, what the potential location we want to build the smart microgrid, so we should do some study to make a modeling about the smart microgrid first. For example, here, in the Nusa Penida Island, close to Bali Island, I think this is the famous island in Indonesia for the tourism destination. We look at to the daily curve of the existing grid microgrid here, and we combine. Actually, what we do with the modeling, we want to find the optimization of capacity for each technology. Actually, smart microgrid at least consists of 3 types. The power generation coming from the distributed energy resources, and such renewable energy, mostly PV, and also storage technology, mostly battery energy storage. For this case, for example, we do some modeling, and we found that the number 2 is the best scenario, because this capacity is coming out with the lowest LCOE. So based on this case, the best scenario is configuration consists of PV 10 megawatt peak, batteries 10 megawatt hour with the existing diesel here. The LCOA can be lower up to 12.68 cents per kilowatt hour. This reduce lower than the existing up to 66%. So this is very worth it, very useful to reduce the fossil fuel, to reduce the electricity cost production. So based on this, the modeling, we found at least in Indonesia 59 potential location for the smart hybrid microgrid. Here we can look at the location, and we estimate that the 59 smart microgrid, potential smart microgrid will need, of course, 59 energy management system, and the PV solar is about 2,100 megawatts peak, and the capacity of battery storage also estimated about 2,100 megawatt hour. Instead of the small isolated area, scattered island, of course, as I already mentioned, that microgrid can be used also to improve the reliability, to improve the resiliency of the existing grid for the industrial and business complex. So we already done with this mapping. This mapping for the potential microgrid for industrial, for businesses. We have actually at least 15 economic exclusive zone, here 1, 2 until 15 around Indonesia, and also the another potential coming from the 1,000 hospital in the nation, and also Indonesia we have 100 commercial complex, and don't forget about the smart city. Indonesia still ongoing, move forward to 100 smart cities with 100 smart building. This also is the market potential for microgrid in Indonesia, for the industrial, for the business, for the hospital, to improve reliability and resiliency. What the problem we have? Actually, for implementing the smart microgrid, even though we still have 3 running well smart microgrid, and another 3 still ongoing the project, we have some lesson learned here. The number one is about scale of economy of the project. Actually, if we talk about the microgrid, micro, it means small. So sometimes, the scale of economy is not too interested, not attractive for the lender, for the bank, for the investor. This sometimes is the main basic issue we have. And number 2 is about the regulation. In Indonesia, so far, we still have some uncertainty of some related regulation, especially for the pricing policy. For the last 1 or 2 years, we had 3 times changing of the price of policy about the pricing. And number 3 is we should realize that most majority component for microgrid is still imported. The problem is the price is highly depend on the currency. If our currency is weak, so the price will be higher. It's not good. And number 4 is because the scale of economy is not attractive. So in Indonesia, local lender, local bank, not so many already provide such funding to develop this such microgrid project. And also the number 5, even though it's still ongoing, but Indonesia, we still have no microgrid standard yet. So this issue, technical issue. For developing smart microgrid successfully, of course, we need some supporting policy coming from government. The number one is about the government policy about how the government want to electrification, we want to give energy access for all people, Indonesian people around the nation. So this support the development of microgrid around the country. Actually, this year we hope that Indonesia will achieve 100% electrification. The last report I got on April this year, still the number is below 99%. And number 2 is about policy of government, coming from government also about the CO2 emission reduction. Indonesia has already had commitment to reduce the CO2 emission based on the Paris Agreement, and that in 2030, the CO2 emission Indonesia should be reduced up to 29% based on usual case, and 41 if we have international support. It means we should increase the penetration of renewable energy to energy fuel mix. We hope that at the next 5 years, the contribution of renewable energy can up to 23%. Right now, still 30%, about 30-20%. And number 3 is about win-win pricing policy. I already mentioned that the most critical thing is how if the developer, actually private, want to develop microgrid, is the most important thing is about the price. We only have the selling price base on the local LCOE so far. So I think we need some progressive policy price. And number 4 is we also need the fiscal incentive policy coming from government. Actually, we already had the policy, can reduce tax holiday import facility and tax allowance for developing the renewable energy microgrid. And also we need some funding from government, green funding. Actually, the Bank of Indonesia already launched the program to develop renewable energy in form of microgrid with several options: project development facility, availability gap fund, and also political guarantee policy. At the end, I come to the conclusion that why we need smart microgrid actually by 2 main drivers. The number thing is number 1 is electrification, energy access, and intention to reduce fossil fuel consumption. And number 2 is increasing renewable energy and also improve reliability and resiliency on the existing grid. And for in Indonesia, the main driver of PLN for implementing smart microgrid also consists of 2 things. The number 1 is reducing LCOE, the electricity cost production, is about efficiency, and also increasing renewable energy penetration is related to the sustainability. And for developing this smart microgrid successfully, we need some supporting policy from government. Number 2 is about CO2 emission reduction. And number 1 CO2 emission reduction. Number 2 is energy access policy for increasing electrification. And number 3 is pricing policy. Actually, still ongoing regulation, still in intensively discussion, will be consist of 3 types: fit-in tariff, ceiling price, and B2B. We still so far we still only have 1 ceiling price, but maybe in this year will be come out with 3 type option. We three option for the pricing policy. And also we still need fiscal incentive and more supporting coming not only domestic but also the foreign lender, international bank like that to support this renewable energy project in form of smart microgrid in Indonesia. So I think that's all of my presentation. That's all I have. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, Dr. Arvin. Hi. Thank you so much thank you so much for your excellent and speeches. And we received 2 questions from our audience. If you are not in hurry, maybe you can try to answer it.
Okay, I try to look at the question.
Yes. And so from Mr. Valerie Pace, first, he thanked for your brilliant presentations and wondering what would accelerate the transitions of microgrid and like developer or chain and customers.
Okay. Yes, we right now already on the energy transition movement, right? So energy transition actually, and our understanding consists of 3 movements: decarbonization, digitalization, and the decentralization. In terms of microgrid, of course, is mostly related to the decarbonization. How we improve our penetration of renewable energy more and more to our existing grid. This, I think, we try to align the project of like smart microgrid to the energy transition issue. We as a team leader of smart grid, I can explain here, but I think it's needs more take more time. Yeah, I think I can. I just only say that smart microgrid is closely related to the energy transition, in case, especially for the decarbonization issue. Okay.
Okay. Right. Thank you. And so there is another question from Pierre Worry, and he asked about, so recently there is a go beyond the LCOE concept that has been introduced, and renewable asset focuses is moving away from checking.
I see. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, in Indonesia, we have two main approach for developing energy, especially for providing electricity for all our Indonesian people. The first approach is about the cheap energy. The approach is only talk about how we produce electricity as the lowest cost. And the second is coming in new, the clean energy. So this approach coming from the perspective, we should provide the clean as energy we can. Yeah. So the 2 approach is sometimes like should be trade off. So in PLN, we try to take the at the middle and the between clean and cheap energy. Of course, we would like to adopt more renewable energy, more clean energy, but please consider that so many Indonesian people still thinking about the cheap energy. So to improve this renewable energy penetration, what we do the selection location. So we still believe that penetration of renewable energy can be achieved without increasing the LCOE if we can select the right potential location. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer, and thank you for our 2 audience that they raise their questions. And right, so thank you for your time, and you are welcome to join our following speaking sessions.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much,
Okay.
yeah, for your invitation and also for your participation this event. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. And so our next sessions is focusing on Philippines chapters, and the speakers will be Mr. John Altamonte from Office of Senator Majority Leader, John Marguerite, and Zab Zuberi. And John is an environmental scientist with a background in environmental consulting and management. He shifted his own focus towards the energy sector in 2017, found his own companies, Verna Energy Solutions. He also now consults for the Center of the Philippines, helped to draft new sustainable lectures. And hi, John.
Hi, thanks for the introduction, Zoe.
Hi, John. Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Okay, so I will leave the microphone to you so you can share the screen and start your presentations now.
Wonderful. All right. Yeah, so thank you for the introduction, Zoe, and thank you everyone for coming this afternoon to the talks. So like mentioned, my name is John Altamonte, and today I'll be talking a little bit about microgrid integration and how we can use the IAD framework, so that's the Institutional Analysis and Design Framework, in order to better approach microgrid integration, specifically within the context of the Philippines. Now, I know we've heard a lot of speakers over the past hour or so talking about microgrids, but for the benefit of those who are just coming in now for this particular session, I'll just run really quickly through what a microgrid is. So a microgrid is a flexible and localized power generation system that combines multiple assets. So while each system, each particular microgrid development is completely unique, they all share common elements. So a microgrid utilizes renewable energy sources. So this can be your typically solar panels, although it can use wind or biomass, energy storage systems, diesel generators, and combined heat and power modules. So these can operate separately or in parallel. Control systems are also a critical component to every microgrid. So it's really designed to provide the exact energy mix, the exact right energy mix for the customer. So microgrids are primarily used for local demand. So typical users of a microgrid are local energy consumers, which can range from industry, residential, service providers, or municipal services. So these users may be on-grid with unlimited access to the grid and the ability to island or shut themselves off from the grid, or to be completely off-grid, running self-sufficient island operations. So that's really quickly what a microgrid is. Now let's talk about a bit about the global drivers that have been pushing microgrid integration and deployment worldwide. Number one really is the decreasing costs of renewables or distributed energy resources, especially, for example, with wind and with solar. So the Lazard report that came out in 2020 brought about significant news that, well, it was centered mostly in the United States, but for solar and wind, they were now producing the cheapest electricity ever, outcompeting every other form of power generation. So this is a major driver, as distributed energy resources, primarily through solar, are one of the key components of building out a microgrid. Number two, increasing climate risks. As you can see in the picture below, that is the one of the wildfires that occur now seasonally in California. So California is one of the hotbeds of microgrid deployment, mostly because of the rolling blackouts that now happen on a regular basis due to wildfires sweeping across the state. So climate risks in this sense are not just relegated, of course, to wildfires. Here in the Philippines, we just had a pretty devastating storm, Typhoon Ulysses, and the effects were pretty catastrophic. One of the outcomes of this effect, of this tragedy, this disaster, really was the removal of access to electricity for a lot of areas. It is estimated in, for example, in Cagayan, that some areas may not have reliable access to the grid for at least another 2 years while the damage is fixed or restored. And third is emission reduction. So with global policy really looking to combat the climate crisis, such as the Paris Climate Agreement, several countries and several regions, the European Union, the United States, have begun to make emission reduction a priority. So in the form of subsidies, these can really help push along microgrid integration and deployment. So if we look at the market, generally a recent study showed that the expected compounded annual growth rate for microgrids between now and until 2025, so over the next 5 years, is around 19.08%, which is extremely high. So we can safely assume that the current microgrid capacity worldwide is set to at least double by 2025. If we look at the revenue share per application in the microgrid market in 2019, we see a wide range of use cases. So commercial facilities, a large chunk goes to remote off-grid communities, institutional sites. This is a lot of which are, for example, military use cases by the United States due to increasing cybersecurity threats to the national transmission system, and a whole bunch of other different individual use cases. So again, with microgrids, we really do have a highly variable use case scenario. Now, taking a step back from looking at the global situation and focusing in really on the Philippines, we're really looking at the main problem, which is we have negligible microgrid uptake in the Philippines. And the way we're really going to be approaching in this particular talk is the possible benefits and the usage of the institutional analysis and design framework as a tool in order to combat this problem. How can we analyze further the problem and understand what's going on in order to address it? So the IAD framework allows for a robust and critical analysis. So really it's coupled with the inclusion of a multitude of disciplinary perspectives. The IAD framework can help avoid critical components that can lead to policy failure. We're really analyzing things from a mostly policy perspective here. So in this talk, we won't be, of course, conducting an entire study, but we will be taking an introductory look at the Philippine context, guided by the framework, and perhaps ultimately making a case for its utilization in future policy development. So here is a brief illustration and outline of what the IAD framework looks like. So as illustrated in the figure above, Ostrom's framework, Eleanor Ostrom, by the way, is one of the key authors who developed this framework over several years in the field. So the framework really is an outlay of different interconnected variables that help to understand institutional arrangements. So it really takes into account contextual factors. On the left, you see the physical world, community, rules and use. So various contextual factors to identify the action situation and then evaluate outcomes and patterns of interactions. So this structure has considerable potential towards analyzing and understanding microgrids, which really exist at a nexus between several different institutions. So the framing of the action arena against contextual factors helps to better understand the challenges and bottlenecks that have, insofar, prevented market penetration of microgrid systems. So to better understand what is going on in the action arena, so when we say action arena in this case, we're really looking at potential microgrid projects. So to better understand what is going on, it is vital that input across disciplines, levels of activity, and policy situations is incorporated. The IAD framework neatly breaks down a complex issue into manageable chunks, allowing patterns of interaction to emerge as a result. So let's take a look at the policy context in the Philippines. So the Philippines highly values energy security and independence in the political agenda. The Department of Energy has made this abundantly clear in its annual reports. This is primarily due to its heavy reliance on coal and oil imports and the devastating effects of the oil crisis had in the 1970s on the economy. So since then, a number of landmark energy laws have been enacted that sought to push for more sustainable and clean energy in the country. So the Philippines power industry has been defined by the Electric Power Industry Reform Act of 2001, or EPIRA, which basically launched a comprehensive restructuring at the turn of the millennium as an intended solution to the country's power crisis in the 90s. So set against the backdrop of EPIRA are on the upper section, the Philippines' two major policies on renewable energy. So the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 and the Biofuels Act of 2006. So we won't really get too much detail into what these acts mean. This is just to provide some policy context when we look at the action arena. The recently launched Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, so recently, this was just last year, also targets energy efficiency as a hedge against imported fuel prices and increasing concerns surrounding energy security in the country. So one of the key segments in the ENERCON Act, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, is a demand-side management program, which is highlighted. And this is important because demand-side management is one of the key benefits of microgrid deployments, being able to match demand as its variable with the variable distributed energy resources that are tied into the microgrid. So this is sort of the policy context which we're working with in the Philippines. Next, using the IAD framework, we also need to take a look at the physical and material conditions. So this basically refers to the physical and human resources and capabilities related to providing and producing goods and services. So in the case of this particular study and in this talk, when we look and when we say goods and services, we're really speaking within the context of microgrids. So let's take a look at the key conditions within the Philippines. So really, to be effective, the rules governing the promotion of microgrid policies or microgrid policies in itself must be compatible with the underlying physical settings and the nature of the resources that are being managed. So if we take a look at, for example, the availability of technological components such as solar, we have a wide range of solar providers in the country. Energy storage systems are also accessible and present within the country. Diesel generators have been widespread. Smart controllers and meters are also readily present. So we do have quite a robust supply of the technological components that really go into microgrids. But when we really look at the supply chain, almost all these components are imported. So this may be a cause for some concern down the line, because then we're more susceptible to regional trends and changes. Although we are starting to see some local manufacturers of these various components. So that aside, the imported components are readily available from regional manufacturers. And these also benefit from tax incentives from the Renewable Energy Act that was mentioned earlier. When we look at labor, we have a surplus actually of skilled manpower. We have a surplus of electrical engineers, systems integrators and designers. In fact, I actually know of a couple of technological providers that are looking to send some of our skilled labor abroad. For example, in more active markets such as Australia, because the market there is much wider and the demand for skilled labor is more present than here. And if we really look at the physical conditions in the Philippines, we have really high potential for indigenous energy. We have quite a high amount of irradiation, which really lends towards solar deployments. And also the archipelagic nature of the country really does benefit the microgrid component and the microgrid structure. And then, of course, under the IAD framework, we also have to look at community attributes. So we can generally use the term culture to understand this particular aspect. So this includes norms of behavior, a level of common understanding, the homogeneity of preferences, and the distribution of resources. It also includes relevant political and socioeconomic factors. So to kind of see how this might play out, we can look at some segments in the community. Now, this isn't to say, of course, that the entirety of the Philippines can be subdivided into the following strata. This is mostly used as an illustrative case. So we can, for example, divide our community into urban and rural settings. In urban settings, we have completely different rules and use and attributes. We have high electrification. In most cases, we have willingness to pay due to the generally high cost of electricity in urban areas. And if you switch over to the rural side, we have low electrification. We have significant financial barriers, although financial access is also an issue in urban centers, but in rural, it's really exemplified. And we have poor management. So when I say poor management, there was a study that was done, there's an actual project that was done in Bohol some time ago. and it really was a solar deployment to electrify an off-grid island community. Now, really what the ultimate deciding factor for the failure of this project was poor local management of the system. So technical capacity wasn't there and wasn't really included, for the solar developers or the project developers, was really to capacitate the local management officials. And as such, really management went awry and the project ended up failing. So there are definitely different attributes for different communities, and these really need to be taken within context, because an urban microgrid, so a microgrid that is tied to the main grid, is a vastly different scenario from a rural off-grid situation. So if we also look at the rules in use for each community, we can also see some segmentation within sort of a policy setting. A qualified third party, for example, or a QTP, can approach a missionary area or an unserved area under the Renewable Energy Act to implement a microgrid project, but can't in electrified areas under the distribution utilities franchise rights. So this may lead to some important questions regarding a possible microgrid project in terms of ownership, the rights to operate the microgrid, bureaucratic barriers, among others. A recommendation for future studies or for future policy development would be to drill this down into different scopes and into different communities where the contexts are vastly different, and to really look at the different instances and then analyze the interplay of actors that occur in that particular action arena. And of course, on the IDA framework, we need to have evaluative criteria in order to assess the outcome of policy. Is this policy effective? Is this policy applicable? Will it really promote the deployment of microgrids? So Ostrom really pushes for 6 different possible criteria, although here in the context of microgrids, we can really focus it down on 4 main ones. So for efficiency, this can mean various things. We can look at it from an economic efficiency perspective, which really looks at cost benefit, the systemic financial sense, and administrative efficiency is also something that is quite important. Again, these questions regarding ownership and who operates and what are the levels of decision making that happen at each stage of a possible microgrid project. Administrative efficiency can kill a project, and not promoting that in the same will lead to a stagnant industry. Accountability needs to be highly present across levels. So when you say accountability, different institutions, whether that's government, whether that's the private sector, whether that's the local government, whether that's the end user, needs to be accountable and transparent for the various decisions that are made within the action arena. So it is important to take into account when conducting or designing policy as well. Adaptability is really important, especially in the realm of clean and sustainable energy. Technological advancements are so fast-paced. The amount of progress we've seen in solar, wind, energy storage. So when designing policy, which takes a long time, and a long time not just to implement, but to get right, we need to make sure that it's adaptable and that it manages to keep pace and makes room for future technological advancement that could potentially change the entire scenario. And of course, equity is really important, whether we're looking at horizontal equity or vertical equity. This is a critical component when it comes into account. When we're taking into account microgrid policy, because at the end of the day, if a microgrid does not benefit the end user, or if there's no equity in its usage and its function, then we can treat that as a policy failure. So these are some evaluative criteria that we really need to take into account when looking at developing microgrid policy. So what now? There is a really wide range of situations, scenarios, actions, arenas, stakeholders that we really need to take a look into. And it's really important that when we design policy for the future, that we take a look at the various institutions that surround these contexts. Because ultimately, if we're trying to design policy just to keep pace with the rest of the market, the global market, poorly designed or developed policy will ultimately lead to the failure of its purported benefits. So I think we really need to propose the usage of similar frameworks or this particular framework when looking to design and develop policy for microgrids in the Philippines. And thanks, that's really about it. As if you have any questions outside of this particular call in this particular Q&A segment, you can reach me at john@vern.solutions. You can also reach me via WhatsApp. If there are any clean energy leaders in the area, we do have a couple of WhatsApp groups you can join where we do have a lot of back and forth discussion. And feel free to also connect via LinkedIn. Thank you all for listening and for your time, and to the host as well for having me on.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for your excellent speeches. And I think maybe some audience are quite interested about for international developers or investors. Like, is there any policies or regulations that can help them to enter Philippines market to develop a micro project, more easily and successfully?
Yeah, so in recent policy, one of the, correct me if there's someone from the DOE here, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the recent pushes for the Department of Energy in the Philippines was to have more foreign ownership of local energy projects, particularly geothermal. So this is an increasing trend when we see the Philippine market is becoming more open to foreign investment. We see ease of doing business in the country starting to pick up a little bit, and this really, the ultimate goal is to really drive a lot more foreign investment into not just microgrid projects, but sustainable energy projects within the country. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for your presentations, and hope you can join our next speaking sessions as well. So thank you for your time, and yeah, see you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and so now we will move to our next sessions. Our next sessions is a mini talk between 4 companies. They are Ferry Host Advisory, Filipinas Share Foundations, and Yoma Micropower in Myanmar, also Smart Power Myanmar. And they will talk about how to overcome obstacles to electrify remote and rural island regions in ASEAN. So the moderator of this mini talk will be Ms. Sarah. So Sarah is previously a founding partner of Lanta Group, and she has now left this group for a profitable broadened career with Solar Philippines and Plum Conceptions in the Philippines and Genius Bewa in Singapore. She also works with the executive of the Independent Power Procedures Forum and as a strategic advisor to companies looking to enter the Philippines. She has a wide range of experience in the electricity and the gas sectors, has also led numerous consulting projects across these regions. So she has a particular interest in the energy transition and the risk facing existing technology as the new players enter and left port over the status quo. And hi, Sarah.
Hi, Zoe. Thanks for that.
Hi. Hi.
I think that's a reminder to cut my CV down for the next time it gets read out.
No worries. Okay, so since you are the moderator, and I will leave the stages to you, so you can begin your mini talks now.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to say very much because this is actually really all about what the panelists here have to say who are actually operating in the market. But what I'll just do is show you a couple of slides which highlight what we're talking about here. Because we're talking, can everyone see my slides? Yeah, thank you. I saw the nod from you down there, Bast. We're talking about overcoming obstacles to electrifying remote, rural and island regions. So it's very closely related to those previous talks about microgrids, but obviously microgrids are not the only way to go. So why are we talking about this? Well, here, what we can see is that Asian countries are moving steadily towards 100% electrification. And this is just a selection of some of the Asian countries. I pulled this data from the World Bank. And it's showing you here, if we look in a little bit more detail at some of the ones that haven't quite got there, that, you know, countries like Indonesia are getting close to 100%. Countries like the Philippines here are up at 95%. But down here, we can see Myanmar, which is still struggling to get above 70%, and places like Cambodia, again, which are in the 90s. So here we have, on the talk, we have 2 participants from Myanmar and 1 from the Philippines. So we will be able to discuss what the barriers are and what we can do to help them. So let me stop the sharing here. How I would like to run this panel is I will give each speaker 5 minutes to introduce themselves and then to make a couple of points on this topic. I think everyone's got a maximum of 5 slides only. So we're going to start with Bast from the Philippines. If you would like to take over, Bast, and share your slides, go for it.
Right, thank you very much. I hope you can see my slides. Just to confirm. Yeah, all right,
Yeah.
thank you very much. So I'm Sebastian Quiñones, or Baste, everybody in the Philippines has a nickname. And I work for the Filipino Shell Foundation. It's the corporate foundation of the shell companies in the Philippines. And what I'd like to do would be to give the audience, this is now the hard knocks. A lot of people have been talking about policies, how to do stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So how does it really happen when you go to the field? So I will give examples of how we did it in an island called Palawan, which is in the Philippines, all right? So Palawan, just to talk a little bit about Palawan. Palawan has had 10 power interruptions a month, 13 hours of brownouts per month. And as you can see, we took some clips here from the press, unrelenting power outages and the like. So definitely there's something wrong. And the Energy Secretary, in fact, tried to make a task force to try to figure out what they can do in Palawan. And what basically happened was that even though there was supposedly municipalities, meaning that an electric line actually went to that area, whether the barangay and the sitio is a really smaller component of a barangay. Barangay is like a town or a component, the lowest political unit in the Philippines. Sitio comprises, a number of sitio comprises in the barangay. And as you can see, there's still a huge amount that needs to be energized, even though an electric line has already gone to that particular area. So what we have done, sinag is a term in the Tagalog language. It's called sun rays, because what we had wanted to do was to provide 24/7 power to off-grid sites in Palawan, meaning that these are really in very, very far-flung areas that the electric grid is not yet connected to. Obviously, the electric grid does have legal authority to to electrify the whole area. We are not a QTP. We are a foundation. We got permission from them to electrify particular areas, and we are going to be working with them going forward and electrifying even more, which eventually will become part of their electrical grid utility. So what has happened now? We have already roughly 6 microgrid sites. We have been installing a few every year. Shell has has agreed to fund these programs. So again, because we're a foundation, we don't charge this to any of our to the beneficiaries. And what has happened now, after putting all the sites in place, we have 4 sites which has ISHS. That's another term, in other words, for you have areas which are individual homes, have their own areas. Kiosk is just an area where people can charge their cell phones and get water, because this is also connected to a deep well system, and then we are able to bring water to the community. And then we have a bunch of solar farms and the like. These are 24/7, so meaning that we have diesel, batteries, sometimes wind, sometimes pico hydro. All right. I give here an example of the sites that we have gone to in the various areas. As you can see, it's all over the place in the Palawan area. Okay, now going to the challenges and how we have addressed them. Obviously, these are areas where you really have nowhere to, in terms of getting there, you have to, some of them have, you have to cross 11 rivers on a 4x4. And as you can see here, the guys that are doing this, a bayanihan spirit, meaning that they have to carry it on their backs to go to the particular areas. Obviously, the local suppliers are very far and in between, and we need to develop a supply chain to be able to bring everything that's needed there from solar panels to the gensets to all the peripheral stuff. Transport of materials, as you can see, is basically sweat power. And in terms of maintenance and sustainability of the systems, please be aware that some of the areas that we went to are called indigenous people communities. So in those particular areas, they have, well, the cell phone, of course, is pervasive, but there's nothing much else that they know in terms of technology. And to all of a sudden put in a grid system, yeah, and putting in diesel generators, sometimes pico hydro, yeah, and all those things really required a massive uplift with regards to their capabilities. So what did we do? We obviously, you have challenges, so you obviously overcome them, yeah. And we have the strategies that are quite simple. You just really make sure that you do your stuff right with regards to supply chain, and of course, bringing the stuff to the site. With regards to sweat equity, again, counterpart from the LGU and all the like is okay. Now, the part that I'd like to mention is about maintenance and sustainability of the system, and of course, the policies that are needed later on for them, because this is an area where what we did was that we provided them everything, but they needed to make sure that they self-police and they also pay a little bit. It's like they're already paying a tariff. It's like they will already be connected to the grid in the future, but they must then use that, the money that they're getting, to first buy batteries and all the like. And then the rest later on will be for them getting used to paying for the grid. So all of these things are now happening in the Philippines in that particular area. Again, proof of concept is shown that it can work. The communities are paying. And so by the time that the grid gets there, yeah, it will be okay. But again, we're waiting for all of the laws and things to come out so that we can make sure that it can be done to all the other areas. But as it can be seen from our work, it can be done. That's all.
Thanks for that, Bast. And maybe Guillaume, can you do yours next?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Guillaume, William in French. I will share my screen. Here we go.
And while he's just setting his screen up, if anybody has any questions, we'll be moving to a panel question and answer session after these introductory talks. Please put your questions in the Q&A.
All right. Good morning. Good afternoon. Sorry, everyone. So my name is Guillaume. I work for Smart Power Myanmar, and I'm going to give a very brief presentation on electrifying remote Myanmar. I used to be an advisor to the Ministry of Electricity and Energy in Naypyidaw, including working on updating the National Electrification Plan and on tariff reform. And now I lead Smart Power's work on data. And much of my presentation today is really about how crucial data is to selecting sites. And that applies both to grid and off-grid. I'm coming more from a grid perspective, but I think that when it comes to data and site selection, there's kind of, they're united in data, that there's a common core of data that is needed to decide whether a site at any given time is better suited for an off-grid or an on-grid approach. Smart Power focuses on three areas really: data, with the objective of getting to integrated planning, grid and off-grid combined together. Improving access to finance in order to help households connect to their village transformers and connect their communities. And finally, policy support, helping modernize utilities in Myanmar, digitize them and bring them into the era of e-government and this similar things. One of the big obstacles in Myanmar for whether it's grid or off-grid electrification, but in particular for the private sector in the off-grid space, is really the amount of uncertainty that there is. In part because the grid since 2006 roughly has been expanding very quickly, and especially since the transitional government. The grid is really expanding very quickly, which creates a lot of expectations from people, and these new expectations change their willingness to pay for off-grid solutions. There's also parallel sources of electrification going on in the country between a broad national electrification plan, regional budgets, and communities themselves who have had a long history in Myanmar of connecting themselves. Then we have, and this is particularly significant for off-grid, multiple high voltage and medium voltage plans, which we don't really know how fast they're being implemented, but they can really redraw the off-grid map very, very quickly, because suddenly you bring the high voltage line across a completely remote area and suddenly this whole area becomes grid eligible, let's say. That's a common problem at the moment. There's no integrated planning. Grid and off-grid are kind of separated entirely. And even institutionally, one ministry takes care of the grid side and another ministry takes care of the off-grid side, which leads to some challenges in terms of coordination. And more broadly, the input data that is required for electrification planning is relatively scattered. So I'm talking about like the location of the existing transformers and substations, socioeconomic variables, income, expenditure, and such, population, the cost of electrifying different areas. All of that data is kind of scattered left and right. And on the other side, the output data, so the actual plans for how to electrify the country, evolve constantly. And the NEP, for example, can refer to at least 3 different things, probably 4 different things, including loans and plans. And so it gets very confusing. The approach that we took at Smart Power is really to try to bring everything at least together on the data side. So we're basically mapping the power grid in Myanmar as fast as possible. We're digitizing all available existing grid plans. And we're integrating all of that because I'm sure that a lot of organizations on this call today have a lot of data, but as we all know, you can very quickly get completely submerged by the amount of data that you have, and it becomes hard to get kind of the signal from the noise. So the key is to create a tool that allows you to leverage that information and use it efficiently. We've combined all of that into what's called the Myanmar Power Map, which we're currently developing, that is meant to be deployed for site selection for both grid and off-grid sites in the very near future. Our results right now, and you can see a caption of the map in the background here. We've fully mapped 4 out of 14 regions and combined with other partners at a speed of about 1,000 GPS points a day. We have a total of 500,000 grid data points collected. And so of course, this happens in partnership with government agencies, local and national, and we share all of the data with them. We design the data collection program with them. And finally, the future medium voltage grid is also mapped. And so we know basically now where the grid will be for almost a decade. Finally, the whole point of this is also that it can be replicated very easily and it's kind of plug and play. So wherever you go, you can very quickly start mapping your power grid, distribution power grid. So 11 kV and 33 kV in a matter of, I mean, for those who know Myanmar, for example, Magwe was mapped in 45 days, Sagaing in 45 days also. So that's all on my side. Thanks.
That's great. Thanks for that, Guillaume. I found that particularly interesting. It's one of the companies I'm on the board of. Genesis Ray also do mapping of similar kinds of electricity infrastructure across India and other countries in Southeast Asia, because they recognize how important that is for new players who want to enter into the market. Last but not least, Alakesh, could you give us yours? Everyone else ran over a minute or two, so I'll give you an extra minute or two if you need it, but I do want to have some time and make sure anyone who wants to ask a question puts their question in the question and answer box.
Sure. Thank you. Good afternoon for those in Asia, and good morning in Europe or Americas, wherever you are listening from. I'm Alakesh Chetia. I'm CEO of Yoma Micropower. It's a company operating in Myanmar. And I will try to see if I can make up time. I'll have a very short presentation. Just to tell you about what we do and And in terms of the specific topic, what are the obstacles from our point of view? So we are a private company. We're privately funded. So we have a different view, perhaps, from an NGO or a non-profit organization. So Yoma Micropower has a mission to build a better Myanmar for its people by harnessing renewable energy resources. So we have projects that are operating in off-grid areas. That's for the purpose of rural electrification, as well as we are also providing rooftop solar for commercial and industrial customers, because Myanmar has two problems. One is there's not enough generation. So the supply lacks the demand for electricity. And the second problem is the distribution grid is not enough. Right now, depending on who you ask, the grid reaches about 40% of the population. So in a country of 53 million, that means about almost 32 million people do not even live close enough to the grid to get electricity. So of course, we see that this presents a problem. That is, even from a grid expansion point of view, it doesn't always have the economics to connect all these far-flung remote villages. And microgrids, especially solar-based microgrids, are perhaps a way forward to bring electricity to this community. So that's what we do. And in a single slide here, describing our business, as I said already, we are addressing the electricity shortage issue by adding generation capacity as well as building the last mile distribution. In terms of our customers, we are serving telecom customers, because one of the issues that exist is a lot of these telecom towers that are there to cover the whole country are often operating with diesel generators. And we provide power to the communities living around them as well. These are in off-grid areas, and also the commercial and industrial customers. Our business model is what we call a build, own, operate, and maintain business model. We are also, another way people describe is an energy service company. So what that means is one of the big barriers of adopting solar, of course, is the high upfront investment. So we remove that barrier by making all the investment and the customer just paying for electricity. And so we simply compete on the basis of the electricity we are providing to them. Is it cheaper than the alternate source that they have? So that's our fundamental business premise. We are funded by International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank Group, Norfund, the Norwegian DFI, and Yoma Group, which is a Yoma, it's a Myanmar conglomerate, who is now joined by AC Energy, which is part of the power subsidiary of Ayala Corporation of the Philippines. And so far, we have invested $68 million into the company and our projects since 2017. Now, going into the obstacles, just one photo here to show, of course, we are operating in areas without electricity. So here is an example where one of our employees explaining our service offerings to the village heads using the light from the mobile phone. If I summarize, and I thought about, while thinking about this topic, the obstacles to electrifying remote island and such communities, what are the issues? The first and foremost that comes to mind, and this is something, of course, I was keenly aware of before founding this company, and also I hear from many other developers, is how to get financing. I hear two different stories. If I'm speaking to entrepreneurs and developers, I often hear the story that there is not enough capital who wants to support the sector. And if I'm talking to investors, I often hear that there aren't enough good business plans that they want to fund. So there appears to be money, but they don't find the right business plans. So that's where we focused on developing the right business model. So while rural electrification being the target, we approached with what we call a model called ABC model, where A being an anchor customer, which is the telecom customer right now for us that we are using, followed by businesses and communities. The other aspect in financing, I think it's an obstacle, of course, but finding the right money. And I think choosing the right money is important as well for entrepreneurs and developers. You can start with grants or subsidies, but it may not be scalable. So on the other hand on the other end of the spectrum, private equity, for example, may not be right for this kind of business. But in between, there are many development financial institutions that are willing to participate in this sector to get some economic returns, as well as see the social as well as the environmental benefit out of it. So following financing, the next major obstacle that I see, of course, is making it affordable for the customers, for the target customers. As I said earlier, we are trying to make sure that what we offer is cheaper than their current alternate solution, whatever they're doing. And to do that, we have to focus a lot on managing both our CapEx as well as our OpEx costs. And it also requires the right design. I think the previous speaker, I think Baste specifically, already highlighted about the access difficulties. By definition, this remote or even island communities are difficult to access. Here you see a couple of photos where there are no roads, or the roads are not pliable even with four-wheel drive or any kind of vehicle. So you have to move the material using whatever local transport is available. So the design has to be portable. I have seen sometimes some designs come out with a 40-foot container saying that you can just roll it in to the village and get power going. That sounds great, easy to install, but getting it there for many of these remote and especially island communities would be very difficult. We also have to think about maintenance, because access also causes a problem.
Alakesh, is this your last slide? Because you've now had your 7 minutes.
Okay. All right. It is indeed my last slide. So I will wrap up with just 2 comments on access. Of course, I already spoke about. And I think there was also a point about policies earlier. So I think both from a government, either support or not hindering mini grids or microgrids is important. And last but not least, microgrids, for them to be tenable, requires productive use, the customers being able to use the electricity for other things other than just lights and television. So having that education is important.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think if there's any other things, we can hopefully pick that up in our question, in our panel session now. Now, I mean, what we've got on our panel is 2 people from the sort of the more not-for-profit end of the spectrum, and yourself, Alakesh, in the definitely the for-profit end of the spectrum. And so maybe it would be good to ask the question, does the existence of the not-for-profits help or hinder the development of the market for the commercial players? Maybe Bast, you might want to start with that question, and then I'll come across to the others.
No, the not-for-profit is really being able to show proof of concept. So we're able to show to those that are wanting to make money that yes, it can be done. But what is needed in making it happen, though, would be all of the stuff that the engineering stuff, plus the policy and other regulatory things that need to come in. So I truly believe that not-for-profits are there to really kickstart the part, but we are not there for scale. There's no way that we can electrify all of the sitios. So we're just there to prove.
Guillaume, do you agree with that, or do you have any other points?
I think it's a great question, especially in the Myanmar context. There have been well-reported cases of nonprofit activity in Myanmar that basically crowds out the private sector and yeah, eradicates a lot of very good initiatives. So I think the nonprofit sector has to be really careful when implementing projects. From my perspective, I think our goal at Smart Power is really to level the playing field. So through data, so making data available to everyone, and then you can do whatever you want with that data. But at least the goal of us is to make it available to more partners, because some organizations will be able to go like scout microgrid locations and send whole teams around the country to scout the right places. But smaller local organizations might not be able to afford that kind of manpower. So you can overcome some of these obstacles and level the playing field through data.
Excellent. So I guess I ought to give the last point here to Alakesh, who can tell us whether that's working or not.
It depends entirely on, I think, the mandate as well as the mindset of each organization. What I see is sometimes some organizations, for example, like Smart Power Myanmar, has the right approach and the right mindset, which is to enable the private for-profit players. But sometimes I also do come across some non-profits or charitable organizations that have money to spend, that don't care how they might be actually hurting or disrupting the sector by throwing in easy money.
That's good. Well, we have a question here from Jürgen Lorenz, who I think is addressing this to your comment, Bast. If you have proof of concept, shouldn't you also be able to immediately scale up?
Non-for-profits, have funders who are really demanding that we go and do things which have a lot of impact. And of course, the impact that we are trying to show here is the fact that a businessman can actually come in and make things happen. We're not there to make money. Non-for-profits, we don't make money. So we just show to people that these things can happen. So we don't want to scale up. We just want to make sure that we can show that it can happen for the business people, and then let it happen, that the business people go after that. I work for Shell, as you can see. Your Shell, Filipina Shell Foundation is the foundation, but of course the Shell Pectin is there, and Shell is highly interested in getting into a commercial arrangement into all of these things. And of course, what we are doing then gets noticed by the big brother, and they are the ones that probably will pour in the millions.
Yes, as Jürgen now comments, Shell would have enough capital to fund this. So I think we've probably answered that question. But it does lead us into the next question very nicely, which really is about the finance that is available. What finance is available? Who is providing this finance? And how do we overcome the obstacles to finance? Maybe you'd like to start on this one, Alakesh.
Yes, as I already alluded to, there is capital available from development financial institutions that are interested in this. And lately, in the last couple of years, I noticed that a lot of the large utility companies around the world, the traditional utility companies, are also realizing that decentralization is the future. And microgrids, as you know, by nature, is a decentralized utility. And there is a lot of interest from that side of the industry as well. So that's where I think the capital is, other than, of course, there is philanthropic and charitable and foundation-based capital.
Guillaume or Bast, do you want to pick up on that question as well?
I'll leave it to you, Bast.
No, I don't think I'll be able to comment too much on that one.
Well, maybe in that case, you'll be able to comment on scale. What is scale in the context of these smaller off-grid and microgrid installations? And when will we hit it? When will you know that you have scale, Bast, and that you can then step back and allow the commercial sector to come in and pick it up?
Okay, so the places that we are going to are remote island villages, yeah, that are really difficult to get to. And so when you talk about scale, you obviously want to count how many communities are within those particular areas. And the only what we can only do with regards to scale would be to choose a few amongst the various areas. That's why I showed you in the map of Palau. We're not concentrated in one area. We go to the various areas to try to see what it takes to be able to go to those areas, and then what then is needed by others to follow us. So our scale, the scaling part there is to just show, yes, by going to these particular areas, you can actually build a village microgrid system which can power up maybe 100 and 150 families in maybe 3 or 4 months. Yeah. And this is the amount of money that it takes to be able to do that, which then translates to a certain peso per kilowatt hour, which they need to pay to be able to then make it sort of close to, as close as possible to a grid sort of parameter. But so it's very difficult to say when how can you scale that? It's just so many villages. There's so many villages that still have to be done, and we have limited resources to only do maybe 3 or 4 a year. Yeah?
So Alakesh, I think you view it as scale being linked to the business model. Maybe you could comment more on that.
That's right. I think it depends probably from where you're located and the business model. The way we looked at it was we did initially 10 microgrids to prove the concept in 2017. And then we determined a number which happened to be 250. And the way we came up with that number was that at 250, we had a company that was going to generate enough revenue for it to sustain itself without any further investment. So that was the minimum hurdle we wanted to cross, which we crossed. And of course, now to further to scale to a point of being able to provide the services at the right price, so you need the economy that comes from scale. We have a target of 2,000 power plants. But so there is the minimum that you need to make sure that the company can sustain. And then there is a number at which you can say, okay, this has achieved a scale, which in our case happens to be it will be in the 1,000 to 2,000 number.
Thanks for that. Guillaume, given your focus on data, do you have any views on scale and how we get there for the electrification of Myanmar?
I think one of the challenges in Myanmar is that the grid has really been rolling out very quickly. I mean, for the last few years, it's been going very fast, and sometimes a little bit, not erratically, but not in a way that was like planned out years ahead. There was initially in 2014 a plan to roll things out, kind of to plan things 15 years ahead, but that was kind of dropped very quickly. And I think the challenge for bringing things to scale in this context is that, as I said, expectations have changed. And I mean, just 2 weeks ago, I was working on a case of a mini grid where people got a mini grid two years ago, and then now they're seeing all the villages around them getting the grid. And so now it's a question of integrating that mini grid within the grid, possibly to ensure better quality of supply. But like these kinds of situations keep happening. And I've learned one thing from mapping the grid in Myanmar is that, I mean, first of all, there are a lot of legacy mini grids, like a whole lot of them, but a lot of them are really close to the grid. And a lot of mini grid investments that were made in the last few years are very close to the grid. And given the speed at which things are going on the government side and the political drive to electrify Myanmar, it's a tricky context. But I think funds are there and access to finance is there for sure.
It sounds like flexible strategies are required if you don't really know exactly what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
We are running out of time, but we have 2 questions, I'm afraid, Bast, or both of which are directed directly at you at Shell, highlighting how much money Shell has and how much they spend on not the energy transition, and saying, don't you need to get serious in order not just philanthropic, but actually spend real money? That's me paraphrasing two separate questions. I'll give you a right of reply, and then maybe we'll have some final comments.
Okay, so first I introduced myself as being part of the Filipina Shell Foundation, an NGO that does non-for-profit activities in the Philippines. The Big Brother, or Shell as a company, is a different entity that does things for business. Yeah, so they are the ones that have the money, and of course, like Alakesh had mentioned, they are the ones that are going to develop how much they need to put in to get a certain return. We do not look for a return. We are there to prove that things can happen and that we can help our communities with whatever funding that comes our way.
So it sounds like you're acting as a great catalyst there, Bast, and you can't really be held responsible for what the person who funds you does with its money in other areas.
Yes.
Maybe we'll just give, we've got like 1 minute left. So any final thoughts? Since you went last to start with, Alakesh, I'll let you start with the final thoughts.
I think in terms of the government and private sector working together, and I think William made the comment about integrated planning that encompasses not just what the different departments or the different ministries within the government are doing, but also taking into account private entities and NGOs and so on and so forth to tackle the problem, because it's a big problem. It's not an easy problem. And I think all of us pulling our resources together would be the way to go forward from my point of view.
That sounds very insightful. Guillaume, any final wish lists from you?
I think it's just going back to the issue of leveling the playing field and making it, allowing a lot of potential markets to emerge, right? I think your question about the role of the nonprofit sector is really valid. And I think our role is partly to contribute to that, to reduce information asymmetries, ensure that everyone has the information they need to select sites, not only on the government side, but also on the private sector side and for other NGOs and communities.
I can't help but comment that you did actually crowd out Genesis Ray in Myanmar by doing that yourself. But we'll say that what you have done is so useful that I'm not going to hold that against you. So I'll give you the last words here, Bast. Any final comments from the Philippines?
Well, microgrids and trying to power communities at the very far ends are really tough, but it can be done. And proof of concept has been there. It's now for the commercial sectors to now to join and make it happen, and also governments to provide all the policy backups that are there and help the countries to be able to really electrify up to the final barangay in the farthest sectors of our country.
Well, I think that's actually an excellent place to end this session. It can be done. So we'll give it back to you, Zoe. Thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you to the people in the audience who asked the questions.
Hi Sarah, and thank you all. So thank you Sebastian and Aklish and Mr. Garland. So thank you all for your coming, and it is a very excellent panel discussions. So thank you again for your coming. So we hope to have your attendance maybe in our next year conference. Yes. Okay. So thank you all. Okay, so now it has come to our final keynote sessions on our conference day 1, so which will be a Indonesia mini-grid case studies presented by ACEW, Mr. Mathieu Legault, the regional business developer in ACEW. ACEW Energy is a leading French green independent power producer incorporated in 2007, with today over 1.3 gigawatt of solar, wind, hydro, biomass, and hybrid storage assets in operation or constructions around the world. With a particular focus on island context, the company has been a pioneer in agri-PV and solar plus batteries projects. today in ASEAN, ACEW is actively in promoting its mobile solar and storage solutions available for sale or for rental for quick and trouble-free deployment of hybrid systems in remote areas. And so, hi, Matthew.
Hello, Zoe.
Hi.
Hello, all.
Hi. Yes.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you for coming today. And so you can start your speeches now.
Okay, I will try to share my screen if it works. Okay, can you see my screen at the moment?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. So still saying? Okay. Hello.
So you can,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe you can open your camera so the audience can see you as well.
Okay, I think it's either one or the other. Start the video. Start my video. Okay. Okay. If I share my screen, do you still see my video? Yeah.
So maybe you can just share these slides for now. Yeah.
Okay. So can you see now, Zoe?
Yeah, I can see the slides.
Okay, so let's start. Okay, so thank you all for attending. So my name is Mathieu Legal. I'm working as Business Development Manager for ACEW Energy. I'm based in Singapore. You have my email address in the bottom right-hand corner in case you would like to contact me following this discussion. So today I would like to introduce or reintroduce for those who haven't heard of these projects yet, our hybrid power plant projects in Indonesia, which we commissioned in 2018. So the presentation will be split in 3 parts. First, who we are in a nutshell, briefly. Then I will expand quite a bit on the power plants that we developed in Indonesia, and then just an opening statement on some other references that we are working on. So ACEW in a nutshell. So ACEW is a French IPP incorporated in 2007. We are a private company, private funds. We do full scale of IPP from development to financing, construction and operation of our assets. We have today we have to this date 1.2 gigawatt post financial closing. So these are vastly majority of utility scale projects, so grid connected scale projects, so larger than the mini grid that we're talking today. So 1.2 gigawatt. We also do biomass, so we have a 95 megawatt thermal heat power, and we also do storage with 48 megawatt hour storage capacity installed today for both mini grids and grid connected applications. So as an IPP, we do wind, solar, biomass, hydro, and storage. And today, for a combined investment of 2.5 billion euro, we have revenues from the sales of electricity slightly exceeding 260 million euros. The group is headquartered in Paris, and we have some 15 offices across the globe. Most references are in Europe or French overseas territories, as well as in the US, with some massive wind solar farms being closed over the first confinement, earlier this year. And we also have in a large office in Indonesia, we have an office in Mongolia, we have offices in the Pacific, to work on those electrification of many islands from Indonesia to the Pacific mainly. Power plants. So I have a 1-minute video. Hopefully you can see it. So this is about the 3 projects that we will present today. So it's using our proprietary technology that I will have occasion to develop a bit further later. So this project here is in Berau. It's in Kalimantan. It's in Indonesia. Commissioned in 2018. Okay, so it was a brief introduction video. So the project context is this one. So it's an EPC tender, which was so a few years back there was the Millennium Challenge Corporation, which is an independent US agency, which developed a program in Indonesia called MCA for the development of mini grids in remote areas. ACEW was one of the few beneficiaries. And so with this support from the MCC/MCA, we did the mini grid EPC contract of 3 projects, 3 villages. So EPC is actually reducing the activity included from a project identification from the site identification. For the site identification, we worked with local authorities to help us identify the region which needed most. And then from there, we had to conduct interview to build the daily load profile and to forecast the future expansions of the load profile, and eventually to build and to size and to build the complete hybrid power plant, including the distribution network and the end users at the meter ends. So eventually, it's a total of 3 villages: Merabu, Longbeliu, and Teluk Sembang, which were electrified. It's a combined number of households exceeding 460, and the 3 villages together, the 3 hybrid power plants, have a combined capacity of 1.2 megawatt peak solar and 2.1 megawatt hours storage. So the location is there. So it's in remote Kalimantan area in Indonesia. So the 3 villages are apart from each other. So it's here to zoom in where we see Berau Regency, the Berau city, which is the largest city around. And we see the road to go to each of the villages. So Longbeliu is roughly 2 hours driving from the city. Merabu is roughly 4 hours driving, and Teluk Sembang is roughly 7 hours driving. So before the project funded by the MCA and developed and built by ACEW, the villages were only using diesel genset only a few hours a day because of the high cost of diesel. They couldn't afford to run the gensets for longer than those short time during the evening. And so ACEW, as part of the project, so after identifying the 3 villages, conducted interviews with the local population to understand what would the load profile look like if they could have access 24 hours 7. So interviews, checking with what appliances, what is the consumption of each appliances, and what time of the day it would be used, so that eventually by putting all those information together, we could come up with the load profile. So this is what it would look like for Merabu. This is for year 1, obviously. So the load profile is meant to evolve over time. With the access of electricity, we could expect more usage of electricity to be made. This is a load profile for Longbeliu, following interviews in Longbeliu with the local population, and the same with the 3rd village, Teluk Sembang. From there, one of the requirements, so this was a specific requirement from the MCA, was to design the mini grids for year 20. So I think that's a critical question that mini grids developers must have in mind when they develop the mini grid, is when is the mini grid becoming too small for the expected demand growth. So in that case, the requirement was to develop for year 20, which left plenty of time for future expansion in the future. And so we looking at national demand growth, which is over the country in Indonesia, it's roughly 3%. So here we expected 6% growth for the first 5 years, expecting more usage to be done faster as they have access to 24 hours, 7 days a week electricity access, and eventually the demand growth to slow down to reach national average. And yeah, so the 3 systems for the 3 villages was designed for year 20. So year 20. So this is the design for the first village. That's the village that we saw initially on the video, using the solar containers and using. So we have the solar containers for the solar power plant. We have the control room. We have the storage area. We have the genset shelter, and we have some vocational training building, which was also another requirement to bring other benefits than electricity only, but also to bring some social benefits to the villages. So we had some dedicated building for this, for training on O&M and also for other purposes. The same goes for Longbelieu, and the same goes for Telon, the third villages. The component we use, so as mentioned and as you could see in the video earlier, so we used proprietary technology. We use this one, the solar container, for the first village, Merabu, and for topography issues, we use the conventional ground-mounted PV for the two others. So this is a solar container that now we are actively promoting in Southeast Asia and overseas and beyond Southeast Asia. And it's meant mainly for very remote applications where EPC cost would be prohibitive, and also for temporary applications, whether it's for leasing or whether it's for land concessions, like in mining and other applications. So it's typically ideal for such applications thanks to the absence of foundations and the absence of concrete, despite what we could see on the videos earlier, because these are old references, but today there's no more concrete, so making it easier and more mobile to install and to relocate. The same goes for storage. So this equipment is used and applied on the three villages that we saw earlier. So the three villages in a 20-foot container form. We also have a larger solution for 40 and 45-foot container solution, mainly for grid-connected applications that we see more and more demands for. HMI as well, and the whole EMS for the hybrid power plant management. So controlling the storage equipment, the genset, and the power plant, as well as making sure the demand and the production are matching constantly. So this is developed as well in-house and customizable for each project. We used here an SDMO genset that you could see from site. And so, as mentioned earlier, the power plant, the systems were one of the requirements was to be designed for year 20 to make sure there is no shortage of power just before the population start getting used to it and start developing activities. So because of this oversizing, which means for the first few years the system is oversized and the genset is little used, because again it's sized given assuming a larger demand designed for year 20. So in this case, the solar power plant produces electricity during the day. The excess is stored in the ESS, in the storage technology, which will provide the balance missing power to match the demand at all time. And by the time we reach nightfall, the ESS will take over and will fulfill 100% of the load. And throughout the night, because again the system is oversized for year one, eventually as we go over the years and as the system is less oversized, it will be similar as in a cloudy day today, where the genset would kick in towards the end of the night to take over the demand matching until the early hours and the sunrise, when the solar and the ESS will take over again and the genset will switch off. So although this was grant-funded project, we had to stick obviously with all the regulation in Indonesia, including all the permitting requirements. So we had to obtain the certificate like operasi, which is the certificate which is required to allow for operation of the solar plant, operation of the diesel power plant, operation of the transmission line. We also have obtained all the non-technical permittings and licenses including the WILUS. WILUS is a tricky document to obtain to have authorization to sell electricity to end users directly, so without the involvement of PLN, because this project is in areas not covered by PLN, so it's ACEW and the SPVs are directly providing electricity to the end users, so the WILUS certificate is required. The IUPTL as well for license to operate commercially, and finally the tariff approval. Although PLN is not involved in the project, there is a requirement to have this standard electricity tariff throughout Indonesia, including in remote mini grids, like it was the case for us. Obviously, it's easier to match the national tariff when we have support on the capex and only have to focus on the opex. So the SPV, so we have 3 SPVs for each of the projects. So 3 projects, 3 villages, 3 villages, 3 projects, 3 SPVs. So the funding come mostly from MCA Indonesia, so the MCC agency. We also have support from the village community as in the form of in-kind contribution as a land provider. So the land is provided by the community. ACEW acted as a project developer and a project management company. We worked with a local local contractor for the EPC contract for the EPC for the actual construction of the project, and then we work obviously with we collaborated with all the local authorities for the obtention of the various licenses and permits. So each of the SPVs is structured this way, with ACEW Energy having a minority stakes. Bundes is the local government, or if you say like the community, local community of the villages, so active as majority shareholders in the SPV. So the SPVs are owned majority by the local population. In the board of directors, we have ACEW as a CEO just to ensure a smooth operation of the assets, and eventually most of the members and directors are from the village directly. So the SPVs are owned and operated by the villages with supervision support from ACEW Energy, which is passing over the responsibilities over time as we train them on the operation maintenance of the assets. Some question which we receive regularly is on the O&M strategy. So O&M strategy, so we usually divide it in 3 steps. So the first one, level 1 operation O&M operations can be operated by people locally, which does not require any sophisticated skills. It's mostly some cleaning, some vegetation management, and some basic electrical maintenance. Then comes level 2 with a contracted O&M company, which is based in Berao, so the largest village around, and which travels from one side to another to conduct preventive maintenance as well as corrective maintenance if needed. And finally, we have ACEW from Jakarta and from Paris, which assist remotely with the control system and advanced troubleshooting. Tariff calculation. So yeah, nothing to hide. So as mentioned earlier, one of the imposition by the local authorities is to have electricity tariff which is matching with the rest of the grid electricity in Indonesia. So in that case, we had to match 1,460 rupiahs per kilowatt hours, which is roughly 10 USD cents. So obviously, achieving such a tariff for such power plants in remote areas was only possible thanks to the MCC support, which covers a big chunk of the capex. And eventually the tariff is mostly there to cover the OPEXs, fixed OPEXs, component B, and the variable OPEXs, component D, for those who are familiar with the price composition in Indonesia. And that's it. Yeah. So this is for MCA, so just some other references as a closing note. This was MCA Indonesia, so it was the program launched by MCC, the American agency in Indonesia. They have done the same in other countries. Lately, they've done it in Benin, in Western Africa, where ACEW was again one of the awarded companies alongside others. In that case, we're talking about 10 mini-grids. It's not an EPC scheme, but it's an IPP scheme where the funding only covers part of the capex and up to the IPP to raise the remaining balance capex needed. And yeah, so here we're talking about 10 villages, 1.7 megawatt peak, and 5.9 megawatt hours storage capacity. And then more on the solar containers and storage containers, there's other references. So this is a project in Madagascar for 3 megawatt, which is grid connected. This one in remote Madagascar in Southern Africa. This is a leasing project in Dominican Republic with a resort, with a CNI customer. And these are some of the references in storage. So we started in 2012 with for own IPP project, solar plus battery in Indian Ocean and then in the Mediterranean Sea. Before we work on these first mini grid projects in Indonesia that we just discussed, and that's it. And at the moment we are finalizing larger ESS projects in Martinique and in Tonga Pacific Islands. And that's it for me. Thank you for attending.
Hi, Matthew.
Hello.
Hi, yes, hi. So, right, I can't see your face. Could you turn the camera on maybe?
Yes, coming back.
Yes, hi. Well, so thank you for your brilliant speeches. I guess most of our attendees will be inspired by your speeches and the project carried by ACEW. And we received one or two questions from our audience. So one question from Stefan and asked about how many households serviced by your project.
Sorry, so yeah, maybe I went a bit quickly on this. It was in one of the first slides. So the 3 villages combined is 460 households, so 460 households within the 3 villages.
Okay, great. And we got one more question from a anonymous attendee and asked about does Indonesia have any near-term pipeline to replicate this type of project? And you can find the answer through the Q&A box as well.
Okay, so as mentioned, so this was a temporary grant-funded program by the MCC, which lasted 5 years, which today is closed. So today, either companies like ACEW and others, active players, would need to find other sources of grants like this one, or can go in an IPP scheme. At the moment, ACEW is developing similar projects in IPP format, so with a conventional funding scheme. And so yes, we're working, but as maybe was mentioned earlier today by other people, other speakers, the framework is not as it's not the same as in other countries with a more permanent source of funding. So alternative scheme needs to be developed with private funding most often. So ACEW is working on this, and I know we're not the only ones. And hopefully there will be more similar projects popping up in the near future.
Okay, good. Okay, and there's maybe I can select one more questions for you for the final one. So from our another audience and asked, is it necessary to consider the inflection for the traffic calculation, especially making an investment in the third world country?
So I'm not too sure I got it.
Okay, so it's in the chat box, so you can find the question. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this would be nothing specific to mini grids. Whenever we develop, whenever you finance a project, yes, of course, you need to consider for the inflation, especially when it's OPEX intensive. So it's not always the case for solar, but inflation still has obviously a major impact on the tariff. Yeah. So it was a bit different than what was applied for this specific project, because again, thanks to the support to the MCC. But yeah, whenever you developed a project, whether it's mini grid or utility scale projects, inflation is of critical importance.
Okay, thank you for your answer. And we got 2 more questions, but because we run out of time now, so maybe you can type your answer to the question box.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
I gave my email address earlier, so I'll be more than happy to receive emails to answer more
Yeah,
questions
sure.
too.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zoe. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yes. So now by far we have finished all our speaking sessions on day 1 of ASEAN Clean Energy Week. So I would like to give a sincerely thank you again for our wonderful speakers and their amazing speeches in all topics. So if our audience have any more questions or would like to have a further discussions with our speakers, you can go to our virtual platforms and to use the one-on-one networking functions to get in touch with them. And we have already sent the platform link to our chat box, and so you can just join the platforms. And for our tomorrow's speaking sessions, the morning session will be Green Energy Future Vietnam, begin at 9:30 a.m. And the afternoon session will be Green Energy Future Digitalization, begins at 2 p.m. both in Singapore time. And we also have sent the Zoom link to chat box, so you can write down this Zoom link and join the meetings about 15 minutes before the sessions. And thank you all for your time, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.